75% of XRP investors don't understand token velocity, what it's going to mean for the XRP ledger. You always hear people say XRP can be reused an infinite amount of times in a day. That's never going to go anywhere in price. Are those people right? Or are they missing something massive that's right in front of them? I'm going to explore that in this video. I'm going to give you a full education on how many times XRP can be used per day and what is actually going to happen here over the next few months. Let's just jump right into this, and we're going to get into a lot of really good detail. 74.1% of XRP investors don't know what token velocity actually is, and it could be the real reason XRP struggles to moon. If you hold XRP, you need to understand this. Here is the breakdown. What is token velocity? Token velocity equals how often a token changes hands. Formula: velocity equals total transaction volume divided by circulating supply. High velocity equals frequent trading. Low velocity equals more hodling. Simple, but the impact is massive. What does high velocity means? Tokens are consistently sold, downward pressure on the price. Low velocity means tokens are held, upward pressure on the price. It's a basic supply and demand with a little bit of crypto twist. Token velocity and XRP is designed for speedy transactions. Banks buy, they transfer, and they sell instantly, meaning XRP changes hands very quickly. This naturally drives up high token velocity. The hidden trade-off: high velocity equals great for payments and liquidity, but it's bad for price appreciation because XRP is treated more like a transaction tool and not a store of value like Bitcoin. Why XRP's design fuels high velocity: instant settlement via RippleNet and on-demand liquidity, massive trading volumes on exchanges, periodic escrow releases adding to supply. XRP was built for speed, and that comes with consequences, is what this person is saying. Can high velocity be fixed? Yes, it can. Through staking initiatives, encourage hodling. So this is kind of what Flare and this whole DeFi layer is being built out. As we can lock up some of our XRP supply, that's going to lower the available supply and help with price increases. Token burns reduces supply, but at a minimal impact. This is really not going to have any impact unless the amendment is changed of kind of how much is burned per transaction. In our lifetimes, in our kids' lifetimes, and their kids' lifetimes, it's not going to make a difference in the price, guys. New use cases such as tokenization of real-world assets. We are seeing the development that's happening in real time. Compare XRP to other coins. Bitcoin equals low velocity, hodl culture. Ethereum, medium velocity, gas, DeFi, and staking. Stablecoins, ultra high velocity used for trades. Now, Ethereum, we just saw this worst liquidity crypto crisis event in history. When it really mattered, Ethereum prices soared. It took $30, $50, sometimes even multiple hundreds of dollars to do one Ethereum transaction. Is that really the network of the future here? Because the XRP ledger could have handled that without even twitching. It does talk about XRP's velocity is closer to stablecoins than Bitcoin. Why should you care as an investor? If you expect XRP to moon just by holding, you might be misunderstanding the token design. Price gains will likely come from massive adoption and demand, not just time. Tokenization will be the key to slowing down XRP's velocity. Bottom line, high token velocity equals XRP is great for payments, but it's a challenge for long-term price growth. Understanding this will make you a sharper, smarter investor. Final thought: token velocity is the most underrated concept in crypto. If you're serious about XRP or any token, you need to know how velocity impacts the token. So we're going to get into a lot of information here. Let me just play this clip for you because I think it really sets the stage for what Ripple is trying to solve at scale.
Ripple is really focused on how do we enable an internet of value? How do we make value move the way information moves today? And that's our big kind of multi-year, 10-year view of how the world will evolve. And it's really how do we dial that back and to make it tactical and real today and tomorrow. And I think if you want to enable an internet of value, you've got to connect the repositories of value. Right. And the repositories of value, as big as the Bitcoin value proposition is today, the banks own trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars of assets. So if we want to enable an internet of value, we got to connect the banks and payment service providers and MSBs. And we're excited to have made a bunch of progress on that.
All right. Now let's jump into this. Velocity of money on the XRP ledger describes how quickly XRP moves, circulates within the network, essentially a measure of how active the ledger is facilitating value transfers and transactions at any given time. So we talked about the formula here: transaction volume in USD over market capitalization. This formula is effectively the inverse of the NVT, network value or transactions ratio, used in on-chain analytics. A higher velocity means more frequent token usage throughput on the network. functions on the XRP ledger. The XRP ledger velocity reflects how often XRP is used for payments, remittances, or liquidity bridging. Since Ripple's on-demand liquidity model involves institutions buying XRP, sending it across borders, and selling it instantly, XRP tends to exhibit relatively high velocity compared to assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are more often held or staked. This rapid movement of XRP through transaction makes it behave more like a utility token or a stablecoin in circulation rather than a store of value. Implications of high and low velocity, we did talk about that a little bit more here. High velocity indicates intense activity. XRP ledger, banks, DEXs, or stablecoins moving funds rapidly. It correlates with growing utility and adoption, often preceding potential price volatility or rallies if paired with rising transaction volume. Low velocity suggests holding behavior dominates, investors holding XRP reducing transactional use and potentially limiting network liquidity for payments. Velocity trends in the XRP ledger. Recent on-chain data shows that XRP ledger velocity has been climbing throughout late 2024 and early 2025 alongside increases in DEX activity, tokenized asset transfers, and payment volumes. Analysts, including crypto quants Martum, have noted that the increase in this metric often precede price surges because they signal genuine on-chain utilization and liquidity circulation. And so people often say if XRP can be reused hundreds of times per day, is the price ever going to go up? Even though XRP can theoretically be reused hundreds or even thousands of times per day, this doesn't automatically mean the price cap is set. The key lies between velocity, liquidity demand, and available supply interact. XRP's value rises when demand for liquidity outpaces the available XRP that can be efficiently reused. Why high reuse doesn't eliminate price growth? The fundamental formula for utility value estimates total payment volume over available supply and velocity. If XRP was reused 100 times per day, fewer tokens are needed for settling global payments, but that only holds if liquidity providers and institutions can actually reuse it efficiently across all the corridors. In practice, liquidity is fragmented by geography, regulation, and corridor isolation, meaning XRP must be held locally to support payment flows. You have all of these payment flows all over the world. Yes, you could use XRP in all of these different flows, but that's not how it really works. You're going to need this amount of XRP for these flows and these flows and these flows. Sooner or later, the demand outweighs how much XRP is available. For instance, transaction velocity on paper might theoretically be infinite as payments settle in 3 seconds, but institutional participants still need to pre-hold XRP reserves to guarantee instant liquidity. These held reserves create genuine locked value, supporting price appreciation and usage grows and scales globally. Also, if these financial institutions are really going to be using XRP at scale, aren't each one of these institutions going to want their own? They're going to want to have their own value for XRP, their own liquidity locked up. When velocity becomes a limiting factor, a high token velocity can suppress price growth in certain contexts because it implies each token is circulating more rapidly. The effective supply for transactions increases, which can reduce upward price pressure if demand is consistent. Analysts have described this relationship as a friction between utility velocity and the store of value dynamics. This is why XRP's path to price growth depends on the scale of volume flowing through on-demand liquidity rather than just the frequency of reuse. The real drivers of value here are going to be liquidity lockups. Market makers and banks must hold XRP in varying corridors to ensure transfer capacity. These locked balances create scarcity. Global payment volumes, Ripple's on-demand liquidity processes more remittances and interbank traffic. Swift corridors-based utility value rises. Limited circulating supply, roughly 52 to 55 billion XRP is available with escrow. Lost coins and institutional commitments reducing true float. And this is actually not how much XRP is available on exchanges. Token burns, we're not going to get into that too much because it doesn't really play a role here. According to Binance model, if 3 trillion in annual ODL volume is divided by 10 XRP reused per day, base price could be $5 to $6. But if the reuse rate drops to 5 times per day, the price goes to $5 to $11 to $12. This reflects a balancing act. The more efficiently XRP circulates, the less supply is needed, but rising global volume still eventually overwhelms reuse efficiency, pushing price upward. Now, here is the CEO of Uphold talking about just that.
And the utility use case for us is incredibly important. And, one of the best examples right now is Ripple and its payment network, which is helping big companies move money around the world. And we're one of the nodes in that network that allow them to convert crypto into fiat and then to pay out to banks in some of those corridors.
Wow. Now, Simon, I know you probably can't answer this question, but the audience is going to want me to ask anyway. Are there any names of institutions that you can name drop, or that's all under NDA?
I'm sorry, I can't. But what I can say is there's some very well-known names. So, this is not like a fringe activity. There's some major corporations moving money this way.
This was in 2024. After all of these big announcements we've had in 2025, I'd imagine this is even bigger. Now, if you're still struggling to understand the velocity of money, this is a very plain video, but it really does describe it pretty well. So let me just play it. Bear with me. Here we go.
The velocity of money measures the rate at which money goes from one transaction to another in an economy. In simple terms, it's how often and how quickly a dollar changes hands. Usually, if money circulates through an economy at faster speeds, the economy is seeing more transactions and is probably healthier than an economy with a slower velocity of money. A faster velocity also means businesses are further along in the business cycle, which leads to price increases and a higher rate of inflation. To understand the concept, consider a very small and simple economy that includes only three entities: a grocer, a rancher, and a farmer. They have $50 between them, which the grocer just happens to own. The grocer pays the rancher $50 for meat she wants to sell at her store. The rancher pays the farmer $50 for some grain to feed his livestock. The farmer then pays the grocer $50 for groceries she needs to feed her family. The original $50 bought $150 worth of goods by changing hands 3 times. The velocity of money in this economy is 3. The figure can be viewed as the money supply's rate of turnover. Velocity of money is usually measured as a ratio of GNP to a country's total supply of money.
All right, we don't need to get that into it, but I also wanted to understand, the current effective supply of XRP. This was kind of part of the research. I'll just kind of go through this with you. As of mid-October 2025, the best available data that indicates XRP effective or liquid supply, the portion actually traded and usable in on-demand liquidity corridors, is far smaller than the official circulating figure. So the total figure is 100 billion. The circulating figure is roughly 59 billion. I think it's actually higher now. I think it's like 64 or 65 billion. It says escrow to treasury holding XRP roughly 41 billion. Yeah, this has a little bit older data. I don't know why it pulled this, but it's pulling from this CoinGecko 2025 liquidity report. But it says the report shows that most XRP liquidity is concentrated on Binance and Coinbase, which together control 67%. It does talk a little bit about when adjusted for ODL corridors, institutional custody lockups, and treasury holdings, analysts estimate that roughly 8 to 12 billion XRP is readily available for transaction liquidity. And I also wanted to better understand, Ripple escrowed holdings. So I wanted to get in depth a little bit about this. Is this available, off limits until monthly releases and thus executed effective supply? Likewise, XRP held by institutions or investors. So locked XRP, escrowed or restricted corporate reserves, non-liquid, inactive XRP, long-term or institutional holding, not routinely traded, illiquid, and then active XRP, which is XRP balances, ODL corridor reserves, and liquidity provider holdings. I still wanted to know kind of what is the supply we should be dealing with? Is it the supply that's left on exchanges? Is it in the ODL? So I kind of wanted to expand this a bit further. I said, how can XRP on exchanges for sale be used through ODL though? Isn't it just for sale? It's not in Ripple's ODL system, but Ripple can pull from exchanges for ODL anytime. And so this is an excellent and nuanced question, and it gets to the core of how Ripple's on-demand liquidity works. So I feel like this is a part that you guys need to know here. XRP listed for sale on exchanges isn't directly sitting inside Ripple's on-demand liquidity system, but those same exchanges and order books are where ODL sources its liquidity in real time via connected market makers. How ODL actually sources XRP. ODL doesn't rely on Ripple's manually pulling XRP from exchanges. Instead, when an institution triggers a cross-border transfer, Ripple's on-demand liquidity stack automatically routes through partner exchanges that have ODL API integrations. The payment institutions originating currency like USD is converting the XRP on one exchange, sent across the XRP ledger, and then sold in the destination currency like MXN here on a second exchange. These XRP to fiat and fiat to XRP conversions draw liquidity from active exchange order books at the moment, supplied by market makers, arbitrage desks, and individual exchange traders who have placed bids and asks. Ripple itself does not take XRP off exchanges manually or dictate those trades. And so I just thought that was a piece that people needed to understand. And then, of course, I have a great clip here for Brad Garlinghouse to talk.
We're solving a problem measured in the trillions of dollars. And if we can activate that asset, if we can make global commerce more efficient, there's an opportunity to drive a lot of velocity, a lot of demand, and a lot of volume across XRP. We are just at the starting line. I also said, look, I think we've taken the first few steps of a marathon, but what I can also say is we've crossed the starting line of that marathon, and really no other companies in this space have.
No other companies in this space have. I need you to understand how important Ripple is to the global financial system right now. Every single day, their new partnerships and integrations mean they're even more important to the new global financial system that is coming. Ripple on-demand liquidity, XRP, is where all of the utility for payments will thrive from. Companies want to be Ripple. Ripple wants to be the World Bank of the entire universe, right? Anyways, I hope this helped you better understand the velocity of money on the XRP ledger and what it's going to mean for our XRP holdings. Let me know if you got any value from this video. You can like the video, you can share the video, you can leave a comment down below. I really appreciate you. Have a fantastic week ahead. I'm Crypto Sensei. Aloha. Nothing in this video should be taken as financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes only. I am not a financial advisor. Please seek financial advice if you need it. Let's get back to the video.